Hello, I'm a little bit late to this particular party, but we are in July and therefore it is time for the mid-year book freakout tag. I have the questions loaded up here on my phone. This is a new phone and this is a sticker that I got in a Sanderson box. Love that. Okay, we're gonna get into it. How is your reading going? Is the first question on this. I don't know if it's actually an official question. I'm reading the questions from Kayla's video, so I don't think this is an official question, but how is my reading year going? Decidedly mixed. I think my reading tastes have massively changed in the last year, and I am struggling to figure out what they actually are now, which is meaning that some books I'm reading and I'm loving, but a lot of books that I'm reading are ending up just being fine, just being okay, and I have been being better at DNFing, but I could be even better, and I think if I were being fully brutal I probably would have DNF'd a vast majority of what I've read this year, which is kind of sad. So yeah, very mixed in terms of how my reading year is going so far. Best book I've read so far in 2023 is Letters to Half Moon Street by Sarah Wallace. You may know that I am newly obsessed with this book, this series, this author. Loved this. It's an epistolary, historical, fantasy romance set in 1800s queer normative England, and the protagonist, or one of the protagonists in this particular instalment, is demisexual like myself. I felt so seen by this book. I loved every book in this series. So great. So great. Love this. Best sequel I've read, I think I'm gonna go with... I'm being attacked by books, or I'm attacking myself with books. I'm just going to mention the whole of the Heralds of the last, what's it called? The Last Herald Mage trilogy by Mercedes Lackey. So of course I read the first book, which is Magic's Pawn, and then I loved both sequels, so Magic's Promise and Magic's Price, both excellent. Loved all three of these books. So for best sequel, I'm just gonna mention this whole series because I couldn't really pick between these two books, but I binged this trilogy all in one weekend actually and loved it. I'm considering filming a gush video about that particular series pretty soon, so you may well be seeing that. Favourite reread? I mean, I have reread already Letters to Half Moon Street, but I will talk about Rhythm of War instead. I reread this one for, what's that, the third? So this was my third read of Rhythm of War, and I read like 70% of it in one day. I loved my reread of this. I read it just at the right time. I really needed it. I love this book. I love this world. I love this series. It was great. There's nothing more to say. Next question, genre you've been loving or reading the most. I think I'm discovering recently, and I mentioned this in a book haul that I don't know if that's up first or this is, but I mentioned in a book haul that what I'm finding I'm really loving at the moment is adult epic fantasy, or at least fantasy with a hard or complex magic system and interesting world building with a fairly distinctive romantic plot or subplot. It doesn't have to be the main plot necessarily, but it has to be a pretty prevalent subplot at the very least. So again, if you have any recommendations for me, do let me know in the description bar, because I feel like I'm so out of the loop on that particular subgenre of fantasy, even though it's becoming really popular recently. So let me know if you have any suggestions for me. Next question, new release I haven't read yet but want to. I think for this one I will say, ooh, if I could get it out, they're quite tightly packed in here, these books actually. Song of Silver, Flame Like Night by Emily Wen Zhao. I have been wanting to read this all year. I think I got it in a January box. It's the middle of the year and I still haven't read it, but I want to. So this one. Next, most anticipated release for the second half of the year. That's going to be, what's the name of the book actually? Is it called Nowhere? I think it might be called Nowhere. It's the fourth and final book in the Skyward series by Brandon Sanderson. It's out in November, so I will be looking forward to finishing off that series. Biggest disappointment. Let me have a look at my DNFs, because there's been quite a few of them, and I'm sure that one of those is the biggest disappointment. Let's see. Oh yeah, Ocean's Echo by Everina Maxwell. It's the sequel kind of companion book to Winter's Orbit, which I loved. I loved Winter's Orbit, was one of my favourites, and then Ocean's Echo just did not work for me at all, which is really sad. So that's definitely my biggest disappointment, and yes, I DNF'd it. Biggest surprise. Well, this is a cop-out, but I feel like Letters to Half Moon Street was my biggest surprise, because I read this, I literally never heard of this book ever before, and I was doing research for my Reading Books with Demisexual Rep video, came across this, and it has become one of my favourite books of all time. And you know, there's no hype about it, it's self-published. If I hadn't been doing that video, I would never have come across it. So it's annoying to use the same answer twice, but that's the reality. It's the biggest surprise and my favourite of the year so far. So next question, favourite author, new to me or debut? Guess who? Yes, that's right, Sarah Wallace. So I've now read all of the books that are out in this series already, and I was also given access to an audiobook arc of the book that is out in September in this series, Dear Bartleby. Loved that one as well. Actually, I think it might be my second favourite in the series. I think I did an interview with Sarah, and she's lovely, and I'll link that for you in case you want to watch it. And she said in that interview that she finds epistolary style the most difficult to write, but her epistolary books are my favourite. So sorry, Sarah, I know they're much harder work for you, but I love them the most. So yeah, Sarah Wallace. Newest favourite character. I mean, I could say Gavin from Letters to Half Moon Street, but I think I'm going to double up once again, so sorry, and say Vanyl from the last Herald Mage series. I felt so connected to Van throughout this trilogy, and even more, you know, my connection with him grew throughout the series, which I think is a sign of really great character development, because I already liked him at the start and I liked him even better by the end, and I just felt kinship with him. I don't know how to explain it. He's kind of like practically on Kaladin levels, to be honest, which is pretty impressive, because Kaladin is like possibly my favourite character of all time. Book that made you cry. Books don't make me cry, so we're skipping that. Book that made me happy. Well, the books that I've already mentioned obviously made me happy, but let me try and come up with something different. Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers is really quite amusing. It's by Jessie Santanto, which is the same author as wrote Dialé for Aunties, which I found uproariously funny and was laughing throughout. And Vera Wong isn't quite as funny, but it's still delightful and just a really, really good time. So I'll say that. Most beautiful book I've bought this year. Well, that's going to be my editions of the Secret Projects from Dragonsteel and Brandon Sanderson this year. I showed them in an unboxing, which again, I don't know if that's up before or after this. I've just filmed it just now, so I'm not going to show you them again just now, but you can head over to that video to have a closer look at them if you are interested. But yes, they are stunning. The only thing I would change about them, if I could change anything at all, would be to gild the edges. I think that would just step them up to like a whole other level, but it would have been much more expensive to do that, so I get why they didn't, but that would have just been the icing on the already perfect cake, you know? What books do I need to read by the end of the year? I really don't know, because as I said, I am really struggling with understanding my reading tastes this year, so I don't know what I should be reading. Any advice is very much welcome. Favourite video or post you've done so far this year? I think this is added by Kayla. I haven't really posted much this year, have I? But I would say my demisexual reading vlog is one that I'm super proud of and really happy that I did. It didn't, like, not all of the books in it were a success, but I did find some really great books and a new favourite, so that one. And that's it. Those are all of the questions in the mid-year book freakout tag. Not that it's much of a freakout, but whatever. So yeah, if you have any suggestions for me, please let me know. And that's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video and want to see more like this from me, then do think about hitting that subscribe button, and I hope to see you here again soon. Thanks. Bye.